Rumpole and the Summer of Discontent. Change and decay in all around I see. Our present masters seem to have an irresistible urge, whenever they find something that works moderately well, to tinker with it, tear it apart, and construct something worse, usually on the grounds that it may offer more consumer choice. Now, many things may be said of the British legal system, but it seems odd to me that it should be run as a supermarket round which you trundle a wire wheelbarrow and pick up a frozen packet of the burden of proof, or a jumbo-sized prison sentence with 10 pence off for good behaviour. By and large, I've always thought there is little wrong with the system, and all the criticism should be levelled at the somewhat strange human beings who get to run it, such as the mad Judge Bullingham, the sepulchral Judge Graves, or Soapy Sam Ballard, Q.C., the less than brilliant advocate whom an incalculable fate has placed in charge of our chambers. However, in the summer of which I speak, all sorts of plans were afoot, in Equity Court as well as in Parliament, to streamline the system, to abolish all distinctions between barristers and solicitors, to give solicitors the doubtful privilege of appearing before Judge Graves, and to elevate solicitors to the bench. So the Old Bailey hack, skilled in the art of advocacy, which is his daily bread, would be in danger of extinction. Well, the best that can be said of such plans is that they do something to reconcile you to death. In that same summer, strikes seemed to spread like the measles. One day the tubes didn't run, or another the postman didn't deliver, to my great relief, as I was denied the pleasure of those sinister brown envelopes from Her Majesty. In due course the infection spread to the legal profession, and even into the matrimonial home. But I mustn't anticipate the events, which began with that more or less simple case of manslaughter, which I think of as the Luxy Sharra killing, and which turned out to be one of my more interesting and dramatic encounters with homicide. The scene of the crime was a large garage, yard, and adjacent office premises in South London. A huge notice over the open gateway reads, Ernie Elver's Luxy Sharras. Toilets, double glazing, videos, hostess-served snacks, schools, fan clubs, and senior citizens' outings especially catered for. At the window of an upstairs office, Ernie Elver, the owner of the business, a large, soft-eyed man with a moustache, a silk suit, and a heavy gold ring, was squinting down the sights of a video camera, recording for posterity and for ultimate use in the Old Bailey what had become a common scene that summer in England. A small crowd of about 20 pickets was guarding the gates. It consisted mainly of middle-aged coach drivers, but there were a number of young men among them, and a particular youth in a red anorak was joining vociferously in the protest. The object of the picket was to stop the coaches, driven by non-union men, from leaving the garage. The officer in command of the posse was a tall, gaunt fellow named Ben, but known affectionately as Basher Baker, a prominent shop steward of the National Union of Charabanc Drivers and Operators, NUCDO. The incident began when a coach was driven out of the garage and towards the gateway, to be met with cries from the pickets of "Bash the blacklegs! Kill the cowboy bastards! Scrag the scabs!" and such like terms of endearment. As the coach reached the gateway, Ben Baker stood in front of it with an arm upraised, saying, "Halt, brother! I wish to reason politely with you as to why you should not cross this picket line in an officially recognized dispute." This invitation to a debate had no effect whatsoever on the driver. The coach surged forward. Ben stood his ground until the Luxy vehicle was almost upon him. Then he stepped aside with the unexpected agility of a bullfighter, and was seen to stoop suddenly, perhaps as though picking something up from the ground. Seconds later, the windscreen of the coach was shattered by a hard object flung with considerable force. The driver was seen twisting the wheel, and then he crashed into the gatepost, where the coach came to a full stop. When the door was pulled open, the driver was found to have been cut on the head and neck by flying glass. An artery had been severed, and within minutes he was dead. The police car arrived in a surprisingly short time. although when it stopped by the crashed coach the band of pickets had diminished and the younger men had scarpered. As the dead coach-driver was removed by the ambulance men who had come on the scene, Basher Baker was standing near the body singing the red flag. Then raise the scarlet standard high, within its shade we'll live or die, though cowards flinch and traitors sneer, we'll keep the red flag flying here. He was immediately arrested, and later charged with the manslaughter of the coach-driver. In due course, and thanks to our old legal system still being in operation, Basher was able to obtain the services of the most wily and experienced member of the criminal bar, namely yours truly. Dramatic events were also taking place in our chambers in Equity Court. Work was a touch thin on the ground at that time, and I used to drop into chambers to do the crossword, and as a temporary refuge from domestic bliss. I arrived a little late one morning to be told by Henry, our clerk, that a chambers meeting was taking place and that they were waiting for me. Accordingly, I went up to Soapy Sam Ballard's room to find that some sort of boardroom table had been installed. Our head of chambers was seated at the top of it, with Claude Erskine-Brown, now apparently restored to favour, at his elbow. Among those present were Uncle Tom, our oldest inhabitant, Miss Liz Probert, the well-known young radical barristerette, her friend Dave Inchcape, the greying practitioner Hoskins, and one or two others. "Not another chambers meeting?" I asked with some displeasure as I joined the group.
In the new age of efficiency at the bar," Ballard told me, "it might be more appropriate to call it a board meeting."
"Quite right." I took a seat next to Uncle Tom. "I must say I'm bored to tears already." "I'm afraid that yours is a voice making jokes in the wilderness." Claude, back at the top, was at his most pompous.
"We at Equity Court decided while you were away doing your stint of minor crime in the north of England."
It was gross indecency in Leeds. It was also my last serious case, and it seemed a long time ago. "We have decided to put our full weight behind the government's plan to drag the English bar into the 20th century. Erskine-Brown spoke as though he were making a statement in the House, and was almost overcome by the gravity of the occasion.
"There was a man called Whimpering in chambers in Fountain Court," Uncle Tom reminded us. "He told them he was going to drag the bar into the 20th century, so he bought a new automatic coffee machine instead of the old kettle they used in the briefs cupboard."
"Oh, please, Uncle Tom!"
Ballard's mind was clearly on higher things than electric kettles.
"We have decided that to give the customer a real service, we are going to run Equity Court on strictly business lines. You may look on me as chairman of the board. Claude Erskine-Brown is managing director. He will be speaking to our newer ideas on possible partnership with solicitors."
"And how will your new ideas be answering him back?" I inquired, rudely, I hope.
"The office Italiano." Uncle Tom was still remembering things past. "That was what the machine was called. It was meant to brew up the sort of inky black stuff you used to get at foreign railway stations."
"We're going to start by working proper business hours." Erskine-Brown began to outline a bleak future. 9 to 6, and no more than an hour for luncheon. And there'll be a simple form for you to fill in each week, so we can monitor each member's productivity." "How do we monitor your productivity, Claude?" I asked, purely for information. "By the number of years in chokey you managed to achieve for your unfortunate clients?" Uncle Tom was determined we should hear the end of his story.
The up-to-date Office Italiano machine exploded, destroying a number of original documents, including 3 wills. There was the most terrible stink about it. Poor old Whimpering was sued for negligence."
Claude ignored the interruption, and then tried unsuccessfully to be witty.
"We're aiming for a more streamlined, slimmed-down operation here at Equity Court. Do you think you could manage a slimmed-down operation, Rumpole?"
"Oh, very amusing, Claude. But do try to remember I tell the jokes at chambers meetings."
"I hope in the future we can get through our business in an atmosphere of quiet efficiency."
Soapy Sam Ballard rebuked us.
"Without too many jokes."
"No jokes at all if you have anything to do with it, Ballard. I wasn't going to be put down, but then neither was Uncle Tom.
He had to leave the bar, he told us, and take up chicken farming in Norfolk.
Hoskins, as usual, was a few lengths behind.
"Who had to leave the bar?" "This fellow Whimpering, who introduced a new coffee machine. They went back to the old kettle on the gas ring, far more satisfactory."
"I think I went into the law because I wanted to be a barrister." This was from young Inchcape, who earned my immediate approval. "I don't want an office job, quite honestly."
"Times change, Inchcape," Ballard told him. "We've got to change with them. Now, to get back to Claude's paper."
Hoskins, however, was troubled. "I'm not sure we want solicitors joining us," he said. "Do we need the competition? I speak as a man who has 4 daughters to bring up and jolly well needs every brief he can get hold of."
"I suppose, Hoskins, it's just possible that some solicitors have got daughters too."
It was one of Ballard's better lines, but Miss Liz Probert, who had been frowning thoughtfully, piped up. "If we're making these changes—"
"Oh, we are, Probert,"
Ballard told her firmly.
"The Lord Chancellor expects it of us, very definitely."
"Now, carry on, Elizabeth. We'd like to hear your contribution. Don't be shy." Claude smiled at her in the sickly and yearning manner he reserves for young ladies. "Then why don't we become a really radical Chambers?" Liz suggested, and this triggered off more memories from Uncle Tom.
This fellow Whimpering was a bit of a radical. He wore coloured socks, from what I can remember."
"I mean, why don't we concentrate on civil liberties?" Liz's contribution was clearly going down like a lead balloon at the board meeting. "Stop the government using the courts for another spot of union bashing. My dad knows a union leader who's been arrested. That's just the sort of case—"
"Defending trades unions?" Ballard looked pained. "I don't think that's quite the sort of image we want to give Equity Court."
"I'm afraid I agree." Claude was soaping up to Sam Ballard, "arguing cases for the amalgamated sausage-skin operatives, or whatever they are. Not quite the name of the game at this particular moment in history." "Really, Claude, you're a barrister, aren't you? You belong to the oldest trade union of the lot." Liz gave it to him straight. "Cram full of restrictive practices." "Well, really, Elizabeth, isn't that just a little bit hard on a fellow?" Erskine Brown smiled at the young radical with all his charm, but I applauded her aim. "Ha! Got you there, old darling," I told him. "Miss Liz Probert has scored a direct hit below the waterline." That evening, when I made my duty call at Pomeroy's wine bar for a glass of Chateau Fleet Street, my alcohol level having sunk to a dangerous low, I came upon our clerk sitting alone at the bar and looking extremely doleful. "Why so pale and wan, fond Henry?" I asked politely, and I must say his answer surprised me. "To be quite honest with you, Mr. Rumpole, I'm seriously considering industrial action." At which point I advised him to consider another drink instead, and instructed Jack Pomeroy to put a mammoth-sized Dubonnet and bitter lemon, Henry's favourite refreshment, on my slate. At this my clerk paid me an unusual tribute. "You're a generous man, Mr. Rumpole." Think nothing of it, Henry. If only there were other gentlemen in Chambers as generous as you, Mr. R." "Meaning, Henry?" "Meaning Mr. Erskine Brown." To name but a few." There, Mr. Rumpole, you put your finger on it, as is your way, sir, as is your invariable way." I was quite overcome by my clerk's tribute, and I tended to agree with his general conclusions. Yes, old Claude was behind the door when they handed out generosity. It's not that, sir. It's his business plan to slim down Chambers, Mr. Rumpole. At which my unhappy clerk lowered his nose toward the large Dubonnet. "Never trust anyone who wants to slim down anything, Henry." I raised my glass in a general salutation. "God rot all slimmers." "He's suggesting taking me off my percentage, sir. and putting me on wages. He says a clerk should be a constant figure on their new balance sheets. Should I withdraw my labour? Industrial action by barristers' clerks? I was doubtful. It sounds a bit like a strike by poets or pavement artists. It's hardly going to bring the country to its knees, Henry. Ah, too true, Mr. Rumpole, too very true. So, I'd be grateful for your opinion. My opinion, Henry, is this. You and I are the last of the freelancers. I came out with a speech I'd been polishing for some time. We are the knight-errants of the law, old darling. We ride the world with our swords rusty and our armour squeaking. We do battle with the fire-breathing dragons on the bench, and rescue a few none too innocent damsels in distress. We don't fit anyone's business plan, or keep office hours, or meet productivity targets. We can't offer the consumer any choice but freedom or chokey. It may well be, Henry, that our day is over. Over, Mr. Rumpole? From too much love of living, I gave him a choice bit of Swinburne at his most melodious. From hope and fear set free, we thank with brief thanksgiving whatever gods may be, that no man lives forever, that dead men rise up never, that even the weariest river winds somewhere safe to sea. There now, does that cheer you up, Henry? Not very much, sir, if I have to be extremely honest. He had, however, perked up considerably about 3 hours and numerous large reds and dubonnets later, when we filtered out into Fleet Street. I was still in a moderately melancholy mood, however, and lamenting life passing, as I gave my clerk and the rest of the bus queue my version of Walter Savage Landor, which went, so far as I can remember, as follows. I strove with every body that was worth my strife. I loved the Bailey and the Uxbridge Court. I warmed both hands before the fire of life. It sinks, and you and I are off, old sort. As the bus crawled toward Gloucester Road, I was conscious that I was somewhat later than usual. Accordingly, as soon as I let myself into the mansion flat, I called out as cheerfully as possible, "Hilda! Hilda!" I repeated the cry as I searched through the sitting-room, the bedroom, and finally entered the kitchen. This room was in an orderly condition, and showed no signs of anyone being about to prepare anything like dinner. As I surveyed this discouraging scene, I heard the front door open, and my wife joined me. Something in her manner suggested that the welcome was unlikely to be warm. She asked me what I was doing, and I said I was looking for the note. "Which note?" The one that says your stew's in the oven." "There isn't one." "Why not?" "Because there isn't any stew in the oven." "Oh, chops, then. Actually, I prefer chops." "There aren't any chops in the oven either." At this point I opened the oven door and found that it was, as she had predicted, empty. All the same, I was determined not to make trouble. "Well, if you'd like to run something up, I don't really mind what it is," I told her. Her answer, I have to confess, astonished me. "Rumpole, I am not going to run anything up. I waited for you until 8 o'clock. Then I went out for a bridge lesson with Marigold Featherstone." I'm sorry, there's a bit of a problem in Chambers," I explained. I had to commiserate with Henry." "Oh, I expect you did." I'm afraid I detected a note of cynicism in Hilda's voice. "And I suppose that meant carousing with him too?" "Well, I had to carouse a bit," I explained, in order to sympathise with him." Daddy would have drawn the line at carousing with his clerk." Well, your daddy wasn't much of one for carousing with anybody, really, was he?" "Let's hope you drew the line at singing this time." "Oh, no, of course I didn't sing. Things have got past singing. Though I did recite a bit of poetry. Look, Hilda, you don't feel like turning your hand to a little cookery?" "No, Rumpole. I'm finished with cooking for you when you don't come home until all hours. I'm sorry, this is the end of the line." You're not leaving home?" I did my best to exclude any note of eager anticipation from my voice. "No, Rumpole, I'm not leaving home. I'm taking industrial action, withdrawing my labour." "Ah, Hilda, not you too?" I looked at her in astonishment. I had not yet seen she who must be obeyed in the role of a shop steward. "It's not what you know, but who you know that matters, as my learned friend Claude Erskine Brown is fond of saying, although the fact that he was so well acquainted with Miss Tricia Benbow, the fair instructing solicitor, got him into quite a bit of trouble lately. I knew Miss Liz Probert pretty well, and she knows her father, Red Ron Probert, the much-feared and derided Labour councillor, even better. Red Ron had lots of lines out to members of the trade union movement, including that well-known libertarian Ben Basher Baker of NUCDO, and this chain of friendship landed me and Liz Probert briefs for the defence in the Luxy Shara case. Accordingly, we made a tryst with the client and met in the interview-room at Brixton, where Liz, Mr. Bernard, our solicitor, and I sat around Basher, hoping to hear something to our and his advantage. Our client was the sort of man who always seems to be suffering from a deep sense of injustice. His beaky nose and tuft of unbrushed receding hair, combined with a paunch and long, thin legs, gave him the appearance of a discontented heron. "Brother Rumpole, Sister Probert, and brother from the solicitor's office." He started off as though he were addressing the strike committee. "Comrades and brothers." "You make it sound like a case in the family division," I told him. "Brother Rumpole," Ben looked at me suspiciously, "I was assured you was taking on this case as an expression of your solidarity with the workers' struggle and the rights to withdraw labour." "Well, let's say I'm doing it as an expression of my right to do cases that don't bore me to extinction," I told him. "And above all, of course, to irritate Brother Bollard." "Who's Bollard?" "Oh, no one of the slightest importance. Don't worry your pretty little head about him, old darling." And then I started to cross-examine the client quite energetically. "Now let me put the case against you, Mr. Baker. Manslaughter." "What? Ha! Me killed someone? That's a joke, that is." The Basher gave us a hollow laugh. "Manslaughter in jest, no offence in the world. There's evidence that as the unfortunate coach-driver, now deceased, was being carried to the ambulance, you were heard intoning some ditty about the people's flag being deepest red. The Internationale, brother," the client instructed me. "We sing it at social events. It's just like Auld Lang Syne." "Or Somewhere Over the Rainbow," I suggested, and then went back to the attack. "At one stage of the negotiations you told your employer, one Ernest Elver— Ernie the Eel, we call him, he's that slippery." Ben Baker's intervention was not encouraging. "You told Elver that if your demands were not met, it might well lead to death. The patience of my executive committee was exhausted." His answer sounded like a statement on the 6 o'clock news. "Elver was employing non-union cowboys to drive kids on outings. They didn't know the road, and they didn't know the vehicles. There was going to be an accident sooner or later." "Is that what you meant?" I wasn't convinced. "I swear to God." "Oh, are you a religious man, Mr. Baker?" "No, of course not. No, load of codswallop." This fellow was clearly going to be a walkover for prosecuting counsel, so I warned him. "Then try to be careful how you give your evidence. In this industrial dispute I suggest you behaved with total disregard for the law." "We never." "You were on a picket line with more than 6 people. That's not a law, that's a code of practice." A little knowledge of the law is a dangerous thing, especially for clients. I warned him again. "Please, Mr. Baker, let's leave such niceties to Miss Probert. She has the legal textbooks. Neither you nor I have got time to read them. Do you deny that you were with more than 6 people?" "Well, some other brothers turned up to give us extra support, yeah." "Brothers from your place of work?" Ah, not necessarily. Or brothers you'd never seen in your life before. Well, some of them was, yes. We needs all the help we can get. Even illegal help. Ah, I suppose so. Even the help of a brick chucked through the window of a moving charabanc. I was doing it better than anyone we were likely to have prosecuting us, but Basher came back to me with, "I never did that. I swear it. A witness named Jebb was on the picket line. He says he saw you throw it." "Then he's a bloody liar." "Oh, not a brother, eh? Possibly a more distant relation." I sifted through my brief and found the forensic evidence. "Down at the local nick you were examined forensically. They took a liberty." I had clearly touched the button marked Civil Rights, but I went on regardless. "Distinct traces of brick dust were found on your shirt, your trousers, and your hands." "I've been building a wall in my back garden, haven't I? Man's got to do something when he's out of work." It wasn't the greatest explanation in the world. I made so bold as to give him the retort cynical. "So, you indulged in a little bricklaying," I said. "How extremely convenient." Not much later, when Miss Liz Probert, Mr. Bernard, and I were making our way toward the gatehouse of the Nick, crossing that wasteland where screws stood about with Alsatians, and a few trustees planted pansies in the black earth, my radical junior said, "So, you think he's guilty?" "Not at all, Sister Liz," I told her. "I know he's innocent." "Innocent?" "No criminal's going to stand around singing the red flag over his victim's dead body," I explained. "Not in the presence of the old Bill, anyway. You wouldn't get the Timpsons behaving like that, now, would you?" "Well, if he's innocent, we might get him off at the committal." Mr. Bernard was on the verge of a dangerous train of thought. "Our only chance of getting him off is before a jury, Brother Bernard. We say as little as possible at the committal." "All the same, I'd like you to be there, Mr. Rumpole." I didn't at once follow her instructing solicitor's drift, and I said as jovially as possible, "Oh, would you, brother? Always ready to oblige." "Yes, you see, I might need a few tips," Mr. Bernard said. I must confess I was puzzled, so I asked, "Tips, Brother Bernard?" And then the man revealed it all. "I thought I'd do the advocacy in the preliminary hearing," he said. "Bit of a dummy run for the Lord Chancellor's changes, when we solicitors can appear in the highest courts in the land. So if you'll sit behind me, Mr. Rumpole." "Behind you, brother?" I could only give a sigh of resignation and quote Swinburne again, that even the weariest river winds somewhere safe to sea. "Change, as I have said, and also decay, in all around I see. True to the Lord Chancellor's fearless and totally misguided shake-up of the bar, Mr. Bernard was encouraged to represent Ben Baker before the South London Stipendiary Magistrate, a small, pinkish, self-important, failed barrister of mediocre intelligence. The prosecution was in the hands of a deeply confused young man from the Crown Prosecution Service who kept losing documents. Detective Inspector Walcroft, the officer in charge of the case, sat listening and taking notes, clearly pained by the poor performances on offer, and, if you can believe it, Horace Rumpole, star of the Penge Bungalow murders, and leading actor in so many dramas down the Bailey, sat mum, and junior to his instructing solicitor. After enough evidence had been given to send a canonized saint for trial, Mr. Bernard, against all my advice, arose in order to argue that the case should be thrown out. "And so far as the brick dust on our client's trousers goes," I heard him saying, "we have a complete answer." "Don't tell the old Bill what it is." I whispered a terrible warning as I saw D.I. Walcroft preparing to note down our defence. "The truth of the matter is perfectly simple," Bernard banged on regardless. "My client was building a wall in his back garden." I saw the D.I. write this down with a smile of cynical amusement. and the beak suggested that where the brick dust came down from was surely a matter for the jury. But Bernard had the bit between his teeth, and said there was no evidence to commit the basher to trial.
But, Mr. Bernard,
at least the perky little magistrate knew the rudiments of his job,
we have the statement of a Mr. Gerald Jebb, who actually saw your client hurl the brick.
Clearly an unreliable witness. Bernard was enjoying himself. If you recall, he couldn't even remember how many pickets there were between him and my client, or how they were dressed, or— "The time of high tide at Dungeness," I suggested in a whisper, and the bench weighed in with,
"Whether or not Mr. Jebb is a reliable witness is also a matter for the jury."
"But, sir, what about the presumption of innocence?" Bernard had a stab at pained outrage.
"Very well, Mr. Bernard. What about it?"
The beak was clearly bored, and my solicitor chose this inopportune moment to attempt a Rumpole-esque peroration, complete with gestures. After all, he'd seen me do it often enough. "With the evidence in doubt, my client is entitled to be acquitted," he boomed majestically. "That is the golden thread that runs through British justice. We are all of us innocent until you can be certain. Sure, we must be guilty. And I put it to you, sir, in my humble submission, my contention is, you couldn't find my client guilty on a charge of non-renewed dog licence, on the vague and unsatisfactory evidence of this fellow Jebb."
"Not now, old darling," I whispered to the fellow on his feet. "We don't do that bit now. We save it for the jury."
And the magistrate clearly agreed.
"Mr. Bernard," he said through a prodigious yawn, "your client will be committed for trial in the Central Criminal Court before a judge with no prejudice against trade unions."
The moving finger wrote on the history of the Queen versus Basher Baker, and spelled out the name of Mr. Justice Guthrie Featherstone. Those familiar with these records will know that many years ago the head of our chambers was Hilda's father, C.H. Whiston. When old Whiston dropped off the twig, I had hoped to have become head, but a far younger man named Guthrie Featherstone Q.C., later to become Q.C. M.P., popped in between the election and my hopes, and came to rule our roost at Equity Court. Guthrie was either a left-wing member of a right-wing party or a right-wing member of a left-wing party. For the life of me, I can't now recall which. Whichever it was, I don't remember him ever coming out strongly in favour of the brothers on the shop floor. Guthrie was married to the formidable Marigold Featherstone, a handsome woman who managed to speak like a ventriloquist. You couldn't see her lips move. The Featherstones lived in Knightsbridge, which Marigold found convenient for Harrods, and had two perfectly acceptable children called Simon and Sarah. My wife Hilda greatly admires Marigold, takes bridge lessons with her, and often complains to her about Rumpole. For some reason, the then Lord Chancellor took it into his head to make Guthrie, who suffered from a total inability to make up his mind about anything, a Red Judge. Clad in scarlet and ermine, Mr. Justice Featherstone presided over his cases in a ferment of doubt, desperately anxious to do the right thing, fearful of the Court of Appeal, and frequently tempted to make the most reckless pronouncements which got him into trouble with the newspapers. Despite all these glaring character defects, there was something quite decent about old Guthrie. He often tried, in his nervous and confused fashion, to do justice, and he was in every way a better egg than Soapy Sam Ballard, Q.C., who succeeded him as head of chambers at Equity Court. Having given the old darling the benefit of every conceivable doubt, I have to report that he was pretty shocked when the prosecution opened a case of homicide on the picket line. He had an ancient and reptilian clerk named Wilfred, who frequently fell asleep in court. One morning, early in the trial, Wilfred was helping his master into fancy dress for the day's performance, and they had something like the following conversation, the gist of which I owe to Wilfred's recollection, prompted by a pint or two of draught Guinness. We've got to watch the trade unions, Mr. Justice Featherstone started off. They're getting too much power again, trying to run the country.
Getting too big for their boots, my lord,
Wilfred suggested, to which Guthrie replied, laughing, And their boots are probably big enough in all conscience. Remember the winter of discontent, do you? Here he referred to a strike of many trades, including that of gravediggers, some years ago under another government. You couldn't even get buried then.
Terrible thing, my lord.
Wilfred chuckled with disapproval. Oh, yes, Wilfred, terrible thing. Not that I want to get buried. Not yet a while, anyway. I don't particularly want to go on a sharer. But people do, you know, and they should be given the opportunity.
Very good. Some of these sharers, I believe, my lord, Wilfred pointed out. They have, toilets.
Oh, yes, I dare say they do. Not that I suppose I'll ever find out. I can't quite picture Lady Featherstone aboard a sharer.
No, my lord, I can't picture it myself, said Wilfred, joining in the judicial mirth.
Think they're above the law, these union bosses do. Guthrie became serious again. What's the country coming to, Wilfred? The summer of discontent, that's what I call it.
What it brings to mind, my lord, Wilfred suggested, is the French Revolution.
Oh, does it, Wilfred? Well, yes, I suppose it does. Well, let me tell you this. Rumpole's not getting away with it again.
With the French Revolution, my lord?
Ideas were flowing a little too fast for Wilfred. Oh, don't be silly, with manslaughter. You know, there's a sort of legend grown up round the Bailey. Old Rumpole gets away with it every time. Even my wife, even Lady Featherstone, thinks Rumpole can twist me round his little finger.
A very astute lady, if I may say so, my lord.
Wilfred had a healthy respect for Marigold. That's as may be, Wilfred. But old Rumpole's not getting away with this one. I tell you, I've taken a good look at Union boss Baker, and I don't like what I see. I intend to pot him good and proper. At this, his lordship imitated a man playing billiards. In off the red. Ha! At least he won't be able to go on strike in prison. It was at this point that after a brief knock another judge, considerably senior in years and experience to Guthrie, named Sir Simon Parslow, blew into the room to discuss what he called the dotty schemes the Lord Chancellor's got to reform the bar. Stowing away Guthrie's mufti jacket and hat, Wilfred was privy to a plan for a few top judges to rise early and meet in Mr. Justice Parslow's room in the law courts, to discuss the best way of foiling the lunatic schemes which would have solicitors appearing in the top courts, solicitors sitting on the bench.
Solicitors in the House of Lords, if we're not bloody careful, overturning our judgments,
to adopt the vivid language of Sir Simon Parslow.
And, he added, we judges have got to take some sort of action.
You don't mean, poor old Featherstone was aghast,
our jobs are at risk? Well, who knows? Anything can happen. Can you make yourself free, Guthrie?
Ho! They'd better try and stop me. Our judge was uncharacteristically decisive.
Sound fellow!
Parslow departed with a vague salute, and Guthrie turned to confide in his clerk.
Jobs at risk?
He seemed close to tears.
Can you believe it, Wilfred?
The summer of discontent, I tell you. That's what I call it. The prosecution of Ben Baker was in the hands of Soapy Sam Ballard, Q.C., with Claude Erskine-Brown as his learned junior. It seemed that this pair were quite ready to do trades union cases so long as they weren't on the side of the workers. The first witness that Ballard called was Gerald Jebb, who was Basher Baker's contemporary and a fellow member of NUCDO. Mr. Jebb was a small, cheerful man with a turned-up nose who looked like a grey-haired schoolboy. I feared that he was the most dangerous of all adversaries, an honest witness. Ballard took him through the events of the fatal day until he reached the point when my client got hurriedly out of the way of an advancing Luxy coach. Then he asked Mr. Jebb,
From your position on the picket line, did you see the defendant Baker stoop down?
My lord, I rose slowly to my hind legs. I didn't know that leading questions were allowed, even in cases against trade union officials.
Leading questions are not allowed in any case, Mr. Rumpole, my lord said.
As you know perfectly well. Yes, carry on, Mr. Ballard. I subsided, clear in the knowledge of which side Guthrie was on.
I'm obliged to your lordship.
Ballard was in a particularly servile mood.
Yes. What did you see Baker do?
He stooped down and picked up a brick, my lord. Then he hurled it at the coach-driver. Jebb gave us the facts with effective reluctance.
Did he hurl it hard?
And although I rumbled a warning, "Don't lead, Mr. Ballard," the witness supplied the answer. He hurled it with full force, my lord. He hurled it with full force at the driver, Guthrie repeated with great satisfaction as he noted the evidence down. Ballard subsided, well satisfied, and I rose to cross-examine, with no very clear plan of campaign. Mr. Jebb, you said you saw my client stoop to the ground. I began quietly, as the jury clearly liked Mr. Jebb and would have hated to see him bullied. Yes, I did. Hadn't he just jumped out of the path of a charabanc travelling at speed? He had got out of its way, yes. Wasn't the driver doing his best to kill him? I'm not sure what he was doing, Jebb answered perfectly fairly. It was a slim chance, but I jumped on it. Just as you're not sure what my client was doing when he stumbled and stooped to the ground. He has given evidence that he saw your client pick up a brick and hurl it, Mr. Rumpole. Guthrie was quick to the witness's aid in a time of not very great trouble. I'm sure my learned friend, Mr. Ballard, is most grateful to your lordship for that intervention, I said to Guthrie with an irony that I'm afraid might be lost on him. Then I turned back to the witness. One more thing, Mr. Jebb. When the police arrived on the scene, you said nothing about seeing Mr. Baker throw the brick. You made your first statement, I picked it up and looked at it, some 3 weeks afterwards. Why was that? Well, I didn't want to get Basher into no trouble. Well, you've certainly got him into trouble now, haven't you? Why did you change your mind? Because I thought I should tell the truth. Judge and jury loved that answer, and it was clear I was getting absolutely nowhere with Brother Jebb. Accordingly, I asked to postpone the rest of my cross-examination to the next day. I said I was waiting for some further inquiries to be made, when what I meant was that I was waiting for a touch of inspiration. Rather to my surprise, both Guthrie and Soapy Sam agreed to have Mr. Jebb back at the end of the prosecution case, but before he was released, his lordship got one in below the defence belt. Just a moment before you go, Mr. Jebb. You just referred to the defendant as Basher. The jury might like to know how he got that nickname. And although I naturally objected, I was rapidly overruled, and the witness answered the judge's question to devastating effect. Because he was always talking about bashing people what took the boss's side, my lord. Thank you, Mr. Jebb. That was extremely helpful. His lordship was effusive, but the answer had been about as helpful to me as a cup of cold poison. And then Guthrie made the announcement which, like a stone thrown into a lake, would make waves in an ever-expanding circle. Mr. Ballard, Mr. Rumpole, I shan't be able to sit this afternoon. Oh, may we ask why, my lord? No. No? Well, yes, of course. It's an urgent matter. A matter of public duty. I will rise now." And he was off, like a rabbit out of a trap. Miss Liz Probert was gone almost as quickly, saying that she couldn't chat about the case, as she had a lunch fixed with young Dave Inchcape. Then my learned opponent, Claude Erskine-Brown, appeared beside me, staring after Liz with the look of sickly yearning on his face. "It's the contrast, isn't it?" he babbled, "between the strict white wig and the impish little face, eh? No disrespect to your cross-examination, Rumpole, but I couldn't take my eyes off her." "How's your wife, Erskine-Brown?" I tried to bring the great lover back to reality with a bump. "Oh, Philly?" He seemed to have difficulty remembering a name. "Doing a rather grand corruption in Hong Kong. We see so little of each other nowadays." "So you want to invite Miss Liz Probert to the opera again?" I had, of course, got it in one. "Oh, she'd never come," Claude answered dolefully. "She doesn't really like me very much, does she? I mean, the way she told me off at the Chambers meeting. Look, I don't want you to get the wrong idea, Rumpole. What I have in mind is merely a social event, entirely innocent. You do believe that, don't you?" "Oh, yes, everyone's innocent until they're proven guilty." And then an idea occurred to me, which had in it more than my usual high percent of brilliance. If it could only be made to work, it might solve a number of problems. "I have, perhaps," I told him, "a little influence with my former pupil, Miss Liz Probert. She sometimes takes my advice." "Oh, do you think you could advise her, Horace?" "Oh, of course I couldn't connive at anything but a purely musical evening." I sounded as pious as Soapy Sam Ballard. "Oh, purely musical, I promise you, Scout's honour." "Well, I'll do my best." I gave him a Boy Scout salute. "And do a good deed for somebody every day." And then I scuttered off in the direction of lunch, satisfied with a good deal of ground, well prepared. Women, it seemed to me, make a great mystery about such simple tasks as cooking dinner. After Hilda withdrew her labour, there I was in the kitchen, peeling the potatoes, with the saucepan of water bubbling, ready to receive them. There is, after all, no very great skill required in the boiling of water. The chops were warmly ensconced under the grill and cooking well. Another saucepan was steaming for the inundation of the frozen peas. I took these out of the fridge, and it would be a matter of moments, I thought, before I had them open and swimming. Then I ran up against a problem in what up to then had seemed the simple art of cooking. Those selling frozen peas clearly regard them as being as precious as jewels or Krugerrands. Enormous precautions are taken to prevent a break-in, and the packet is covered with tough, seamless, and apparently impregnable plastic. I tried to rip off this covering. I tore at it with my teeth. I worried it as a dog worries a bone, but all in vain. Finally, I stabbed it with a sharp knife, causing a fusillade of frozen green bullets to ricochet off the cooker and adjacent walls. One of them hit the overhead light with a most melodious twang. At last I got a reasonable proportion of the elusive vegetables into hot water, but I was distracted by a whoosh and a sheet of flame which shot out at me from under the grill. Naturally, I had covered the chops with fat to ensure a sound cooking, and it seemed this substance was dangerously inflammable. I had never invested in a fire extinguisher, but with great presence of mind I remembered the siphon on the sitting-room sideboard. It was a matter of minutes to search for it, and returning to direct a powerful stream at the blaze. Strangely enough, the soda water also appeared to be inflammable, because it strengthened rather than diminished the blaze. Then it occurred to me to turn off the grill, and I was beating the dying conflagration with a wet dishcloth when Hilda, who had been out when I started cooking, arrived upon the scene, coughing at the clouds of smoke in what I thought was an exaggerated manner, and asking if she thought I should call the fire brigade. "No longer necessary," I assured her. "I'm just cooking the dinner." "Oh, really?" She was examining the charred chops critically. "I thought you were arranging an interesting collection of fossils." "Oh, Hilda," I protested, "I've had absolutely no training in this line of work." "Perhaps you should have thought of that before you decided to stay out all hours." "Oh, be reasonable, Hilda. Couldn't we refer the matter to the conciliation service, eh, Cass? Or at least discuss it over beer and sandwiches like they used to in the good old days?" Then the front doorbell rang, and Hilda went to answer it, after advising me that if I put the potatoes on immediately I could have them for pudding. She was back in short order, with a figure familiar to me, but not to her. "Can you believe it?" Fred Timpson said. "Mrs. Rumpole and I have never had the pleasure, not after all these years you've been working for the Timpsons." Fred was undoubtedly chief of the Timpsons, that large clan of South London villains who, by their selfless application to petty crime, had managed to keep the Rumpoles in such basic necessities of life as sliced bread, washing-up liquid, Chateau Fleet Street, and the odd small cigar. Luxuries might depend on an occasional well-paid dangerous driving or a long-lasting homicide, but the Timpsons, in their humble way, gave us solid support. They were the sort to breed from. "Fred," I greeted him, "good of you to drop in." "Well, I happen to be in the vicinity, not getting up to any naughtiness, Mrs. Rumpole," he assured Hilda. "I wasn't doing over the downstairs flat or nothing. And I come on the off chance you and your old ball and chain might be sat in front of the telly. Also, I've got a bit of info which may be of interest in that job you're doing at the Bailey, Mr. R." Fred has a far from villainous appearance. He is cheerful, a grandfather, and wears the sort of tweed jackets and cavalry-twilled trousers a bank manager might sport in the pub at weekends. None of the Timpsons is first class at their jobs. But in his day, Fred was a fair-to-average safe blower. Despite his look of respectability, she who must be obeyed was eyeing one of our best customers with deep suspicion. When I invited Fred to stay for a bite of supper, she announced that she was off for a bridge evening at Lady Featherston's, where, no doubt, she could keep going on the cheesy bits provided.
"I think it's a little much," she said as I saw out the front door, "having the criminal classes calling here at all hours."
And although I told her there was absolutely no violence in Fred's record, and he was an old sweetie, she didn't seem in the least mollified. I returned to the kitchen and poured out a hospitable Pomeroy's ordinary for each of us. "I looked for you at your place of business, Mr. Rumpole, but your boy Henry says you was out shopping for groceries." I said I found that a bit hard to believe." Difficult times, Fred. What's called the summer of discontent. Got yourself into a bit of trouble, have you?" "No. Not at the moment." "Cool, this wine." He made a disapproving face. "Bit rough, isn't it?" "Liquid sandpaper," I agreed, "but you get used to it." I was worried by his apparent idleness. "What's the matter, Fred? You're not on strike, are you?" "No, of course not. Matter of fact, I thought I might help you for a change, Mr. Rumpole." "Oh, yes." "Thought I might tell you about our holiday in Marbella." He sat at the table, and I felt a pang of boredom at the prospect before me. "Oh, really? Want to show me the snaps, do you?" "Yeah, to be quite honest, I brought one along. You see, our enjoyment was just that little bit ruined by the arrival of this shower." And he carefully removed a photograph from his wallet and showed it to me. I saw a coach by a white wall in sunshine, with a number of people, including a familiar, scowling young man in a red anorak, grouped about it. "Good heavens! Isn't that the Clan Malloy, your rival firm in south-east London?" "Oh, not rival, Mr. Rumpole. The Timpsons wouldn't stoop to their way of doing business. But it's the Malloys all right, including young Peanuts there in the red jacket. That case you's on, one's reporting the paper. It's manslaughter, isn't it? I thought you might just be interested in the Malloy's vehicle." I examined the picture more closely, and the words painted on the coach. I could make out Ernie Elver's Luxy Sharers, complete with toilets and double glazing. And then I was delighted to see young Peanuts Malloy. "Bless you, old darling." I thanked Fred. "They said as they got lent the sheriff for a free holiday by the firm concerned. And you'll notice the grey-haired old party with his arm around Peanuts' Aunt Dolly." "My God, I notice him. It was none other than the honest witness in person. Whoever is in charge of the universe clearly felt it was time to do old Rumpole a favour. Jerry Jebb. Fred confirmed it. What used to drive Getaway for Peanut's father? You know what I mean. Fred, you're a treasure. Oh, please, stay for supper. No, I don't think so, Mr. R. Fred glanced at the chops on offer. Look, why don't we attack a chink? He stood ready to be off. What are you talking about? Go for a Chinese. It was simple and offensive, like all the Timpson's jokes. You want a radical, Chambers, Miss Liz? The only way we'll get it is to persuade Claude Erskine Brown to stop trying to be a whiz-kid and get back to the old ways. Then Equity Court will be a place fit for freelancers to live in again. We can ride forth like the knights of old and rescue the brothers in distress. I was walking with Miss Liz down to the Old Bailey the next morning and putting into operation stage 1 of my master plan to prevent Chambers slipping off into the 21st century. Well, who's going to persuade Claude? Liz asked reasonably. The person who has the greatest influence on him, I said. The member of the bar. He'd do anything to impress. You mean you? No, you. Tell him you like him better when he was an old-fashioned sort of barrister, keeping up the traditions of the bar, taking snuff. Tell him he was much sexier like that, and it'd sound better coming from you. Rumpole, Miss Probert was shocked. Are you suggesting I exploit my femininity? In a good cause, old thing. And can you think of a better? Also, you might put up with a little Wagner in the interests of justice. So we proceeded on toward the workplace, and that was not the only useful conversation I had that morning. For when I had robed and come downstairs, I found Wilfred, Guthrie's old clerk, hovering about the door of the court. I asked him if the judge was honouring us with his presence after having taken yesterday afternoon off. Wilfred looked at me with sleepy crocodile eyes. "Oh, we're not going on strike yet." On strike? I pricked up my ears. We think it might come to it, Wilfred told me. That's what our judge was saying. If the Lord Chancellor wants to put up solicitors over our heads, we may have to take action, Mr. Rumpole. Quite right, Wilfred, I'm sure. I sounded deeply understanding. So, yesterday afternoon... Oh, just a taste, Mr. Rumpole. Just to show the public we're not to be pushed around. Of course, yes, there was a meeting. Oh, a union meeting? A meeting of judges, Mr. Rumpole. Some very senior men were there. Wilfred couldn't help boasting. Including us, of course. Oh, of course. The brothers. Have you ever thought of that, Wilfred? Judges and trade unionists always call themselves brothers. It doesn't mean they like each other any more. I must be off, Mr. Rumpole. Wilfred clearly didn't care for this line of thought. I must go and get us on the bench. Must be quite a heave for you some mornings, I said. And, Mr. Rumpole, you will try not to twist us round your little finger, won't you? Because we're determined to pot you on this one. I thought we ought to warn you. Oh, very charming of you, Wilfred, I said, as the man went about his business. Very charming indeed. In court that day we were treated to an entertainment. The place was plunged into darkness, and television sets were placed among us on which Ernie Elver's home video played. We saw the pickets shouting at the gates as the coach, driven by the working driver, approached them. I sat watching with the photograph Fred Timpson had given me in my hand, and at a vital moment I reared on my hind legs and called, "Stop!" An officer in charge of the telly pressed a button and the picture froze. "My lord, I call on my learned friend, Mr. Ballard." "Ballard!" Soapy Sam was not in the best of tempers that morning. Oh, it makes no difference. "I call on him to make the following admission, that the young dark-haired man wearing the red jacket on that picket line is otherwise known as Peter Peanuts Malloy." I don't suppose your learned friend has any idea. Guthrie was unhelpful. Then let him ask the detective inspector in charge of the case. He'll very soon find out, I replied. Ballard had a whispered conversation with D.I. Walcroft, and then emerged and admitted grudgingly,
That would seem to be correct, my lord.
It was a good moment for the basher, but as he sat frowning in the dock, it seemed that, like most clients, he had very little idea of what was going on. After his movie show, Ernie Elver was called to give evidence, and as a hard-pressed boss more sinned against than sinning, he clearly had the sympathy of his lordship. As we got towards the end of his questioning, Ballard asked,
Mr. Elver, throughout this industrial dispute, was there any doubt in your mind who the leader was?
The man in the dock, my lord. Ernie had no doubt.
Baker?
Yes, my lord.
Did he say anything to you during the negotiations that you remember?
Yes, my lord. He said someone was going to get killed if it wasn't settled. Someone was going to get killed. Guthrie was taking another note with great satisfaction.
Mr. Elver, what was the man Baker's reputation in industrial disputes?
Ballard's question caused me to rise with the outrage turned up to full volume. This is monstrous! If my learned friend's going to practice at the bar, he ought to do a bit of practising at home. He can't ask questions about reputation. Yes, I think we might leave it there, Mr. Ballard. His lordship poured a little oil on troubled Rumpole. After all, the jury have heard this man's nickname. Ballard sat down looking displeased, and I rose to smile charmingly at the witness I hoped to devour. Mr. Elver, this dispute at your char-a-banc garage was about your employing non-union untrained drivers? That's what they said it was. The big man in the shiny suit grinned at the jury as though to say, pull the other one, it's got bells on it. And my client took the view, I said, rightly or wrongly, that if you employed these cowboys there might be an accident, someone might get killed. I wanted to offer the public a wider choice. Oh, I see. A choice between good drivers and bad ones who might not know the routes, I said. Oh, if you want to put it that way. Ernie clearly didn't. Oh, I do, I assured him. And I suggest that even the most gentle, mild-mannered man might take industrial action in that situation. Take his lordship. Mr. Rumpole. Guthrie woke up with a start the moment his name was mentioned. As you probably know, I confided to Mr. Ernie Elver, the powers that be have suggested that solicitors can get jobs as High Court judges, appeal judges, lords of appeal. Mr. Rumpole, his lordship was about to draw the line, these questions are quite irrelevant. Is your lordship stopping my cross-examination? Then I said to Miss Liz in a deafening mutter, It's not a particularly long walk to the Court of Appeal. At the mention of these dreaded words, his lordship could be heard going into reverse. No, of course, I'm not stopping you, he said hurriedly. But I fail to understand. Then I suggest you sit quietly, my lord. All will become clear. I was beginning to lose patience with his lordship, and he came back with a rather sour, Mr. Rumpole, don't get the idea that you can twist this court round your little finger. My little finger, my lord? I played the retort courteous. What an idea! Then I resumed my conversation with Ernie. Solicitors who haven't spent a lifetime arguing in courts might not be up to the job. That is the suggestion, I tell him. I didn't know. Ernie looked as though he might have thought that solicitors were ladies of the street, who probably were unsuited to the work in the Court of Appeal. Well, you know now, Mr. Elver, and that suggestion caused even such a reasonable, sensible, moderate man as his lordship to go on strike. On strike, Mr. Rumpole? His poor old lordship could contain himself no longer. What can you be talking about? Yesterday afternoon, my lord. I tried to keep as calm as possible. I seem to remember not very much work was done. Was not your lordship on strike? No, I was not on strike. The judge gave his desk a moderate middle-of-the-road sort of thump. Simply withdrawing your labour? I smiled sweetly. As I told the court, I had to go to an important meeting. Guthrie was making the mistake of defending the charge. With a very senior judge and brother judges from the Chancery and the Family Division. Ah, yes, of course, I said, the shop stewards, and what was the discussion about? Mr. Rumpole, the judge asked with deep suspicion, are you cross-examining me? Cross-examining your lordship? Perish the thought! Of course I was, and on I went. I can understand that if the judges are in dispute with their employers, it might be a delicate matter, best kept secret. I don't think it's any secret that certain changes have been proposed in the legal system. As a witness, his lordship was proving almost too easy to handle. Cowboys on the bench, my lord, I said. No, but perhaps, he searched for a tactful way of putting it, persons whose training may not entirely fit them for the bench. And if they get there, I said, can we expect further industrial action down the Old Bailey? Poor old Guthrie was now really in deep water. It's a possibility, he said. We hope wiser counsels will prevail. Then he tried to swim for the shore. Mr. Rumpole, we've had quite enough of this. High Court judges are not and never have been members of a trade union. Is that a legal proposition, my lord? I asked, or a subject of debate? Will you please return to the question we have to try? Did your client commit manslaughter? This was not one I felt like answering just yet, so I turned back to the witness. Mr. Elver, I was just venturing to point out that reasonable people may withdraw their labour when their jobs are threatened. I'm sure his lordship would agree. Elver didn't care to answer that, but Guthrie couldn't resist it. He leant toward the witness and said, Well, surely that's a reasonable proposition, Mr. Elver? I suppose so. Ernie was disconcerted by a judge who was suddenly talking like one of the brothers. And you wanted to make it look as unreasonable as possible, I asked him. Well, why would I want to do that? Childishly simple, Mr. Elver, I told him. Because if you could prove there were more than 6 pickets, you could get an injunction. If you could prove there was violence and intimidation, you could get the union fined large sums of money. You could get rid of that thorn in your flesh, Mr. Basher Baker, and employ all the cheap cowboy labour you wanted. But there was violence on the picket line, Ernie protested. Of course there was, sir, because you put it there. Usher, give that to the witness. What I passed up was the photograph Fred Timpson had given me of the Malloys on holiday. You know the Malloy family, don't you? I asked as Ernie looked at it with some reluctance. I'm not sure, he said, after a considerable silence. Oh, come on, Mr. Elver, I encouraged him. You employ Jerry Jebb. He's one of the clan. They're a pretty hard firm of criminals, the Malloys, well known to the inspector in this case. You hired the Malloys, didn't you, no doubt through Jebb, to swell the picket line and create as much violence as possible. Then, when you'd arranged the performance, you went and filmed it all from your office window. Baker was in charge of the picket line, Ernie insisted. In charge of the peaceful pickets, yes. He didn't know the new arrivals. Those he took for sympathetic workers from other firms. They were your gang of hired troublemakers, weren't they? Mr. Rumpole, are you suggesting that this witness planned the death of the driver? Guthrie, as usual, looked puzzled. Oh, no, my lord, I explained, careful to allow for the slow pace of the judicial mind. No doubt he was as surprised as anyone when someone went too far and threw that brick, possibly young Peanuts Malloy. But it was a blessed opportunity to get the awkward Mr. Baker into real trouble. And then I asked the witness, how much did it cost you to get Jebb to give that perjured evidence?
My lord, I object. Ballard rose plaintively. There is no basis whatsoever for that suggestion.
Or did you get the whole package for a free holiday in Marbella? Ballard's interruption was worth ignoring. Just take a look at that photograph. Is that one of your luxy sherries in Spain? Oh, it seems to be, Ernie had to admit. Do you see Mr. Jebb there? Yes. I have asked the prosecution to admit that the man in the red jacket is Peanuts Malloy. Was that a free holiday? A present from your firm? I don't think so. Ernie saw the dangers ahead and I snapped at him. Oh, can you produce evidence, then, that your coach was paid for by the Malloys? Maybe not. Why not? Well, Jerry Jebb had been with the firm a long time. I wanted to do him a favour. So he did you a favour in return. Mr. Rumpole, Guthrie was restive again. None of these serious suggestions were put to the witness Jebb. Your lordship is perfectly right, I agreed, now that I had plenty of questions to put to Jebb. That is why I have asked the prosecution to have him back here tomorrow. Oh, very well. Guthrie looked wistfully at the clock. I see it's a little early, but I will rise now. Oh, public duty, my lord? I wanted to help the old darling. Yes, Mr. Rumpole, public duty. You may put your case to Mr. Jebb in the morning. I am very much obliged to your lordship. I bowed low and added under my breath, Keep the red flag flying here. Did you say something, Mr. Rumpole? I said what an interesting case we're trying here. For a full understanding of the Queen versus Basher Baker, we must now follow his lordship into private life. My source for what follows is the account Lady Marigold Featherstone gave to She Who Must Be Obeyed, and further details were supplied by Wilfred, the faithful clerk in whom Guthrie often confided. It's clear from all the evidence available that the public duty for which he had risen a little early was going back to the Knightsbridge flat for the purpose of resting up on the sofa with a cup of tea. While he was so engaged, his wife Marigold returned home with a full Harrods bag and a copy of the Evening Standard. I have done my best to reconstruct their dialogue from the information I've received and my knowledge of the characters of the two Featherstones. Marigold's opening salvo did not augur well for his lordship's continued repose. Working hard, Guthrie? I think she may well have said. Or are you taking industrial action? Oh, Marigold. Guthrie had no doubt awoken with a start. There you are. Hard day in court. What's that you say about industrial action? And I imagine that he slid somewhat guiltily off the sofa as Marigold announced in awesome tone, I have been reading the paper. Eh? Oh, yes, of course. Got a bit about my case in it, has it? Interesting discussion about union law. But let me tell you this, Marigold, I'm going to pot the shop steward. Rumpole's not going to twist me round his little finger this time. Aren't you fit to be let off the lead, Guthrie? Ought I to be up there on the bench beside you all the time, telling you when to keep your mouth shut? Why? They must have got it all wrong. Let me see. What am I supposed to have said? Marigold didn't hand over the paper, but read him the best bits. Industrial action is a possibility, says Mr. Justice Featherstone, 53, if jobs on the bench are open to solicitors. Did you say that, Guthrie, dear? She must have smiled with misleading sweetness. Well, something like it, I suppose. Something quite like it. The judge was beginning to wilt under cross-examination, and Marigold read on without mercy. The judge agreed with Mr. Horace Rumpole, counsel for Baker, that he had been withdrawing his labour yesterday afternoon when he closed down his court to attend a protest meeting of senior judges whom he called shop stewards. That's a libel! Rumpole called them that! Guthrie felt he had a genuine grievance. Sounds like a pretty accurate description, if you ask me. There's a leading article on page 6, and as she turned the pages, Guthrie said in stricken tones, "A leading article. Judges add to nation's misery," his wife read out, and his protest rose to a quavering wail. "Marigold, it's simply not fair. Train drivers, air traffic controllers, local government workers, prison officers, and drain-clearing operatives," Marigold carried on reading. "What charming company you keep, Guthrie. Have all managed to put the public through the hell of a summer of discontent. Now, if you go mad and strangle a porter when you've been waiting 3 days for a train at Waterloo, you won't even be tried for it, according to Mr. Justice Featherstone, who also went on strike yesterday afternoon. Come off it, your lordship. Drop the old Spanish practices and offer the public a decent service." Marigold. Guthrie felt he knew who to blame. "It's entirely the fault of Rumpole." "Of course it is," his wife agreed. "Why can't you twist him round your little finger for a change? You're bigger than he is." "I shall deny it all. In court." His lordship is adopting what might be called the Timpson defence. "Oh, do." Lady Featherstone was cynical. "Then everyone will believe it. I had to read the paper at lunch in Harrods. In the Silver Grill. I was deeply humiliated. Oh, Marigold, I'm sorry, but I brought you a present." At this sign of affection, I'm sure our judge was considerably relieved. "Oh, darling," he said, "I knew you'd understand." "Oh, yes, I understand perfectly." At which she opened her Harrods bag, took out a decisively checked cloth cap, and plonked it on her husband's head. "It's your flat hat, Guthrie. Now you can go down to the working men's club and play darts over a pint of wallop with the charge hands. I am going to my bridge class with Hilda Rumpole. Her husband may have his drawbacks, but at least she is not married to a shop steward." At this, Hilda told me, Marigold said she left the unhappy man alone. I see him looking at himself in the mirror, seeing the cloth cap, symbol of the working-class struggle, on his head, and uttering something really desperate like, "Oh, brother." Another direct result of Rumpole's advocacy was taking place in the crush bar of Covent Garden during a welcome interval in some opera by Richard Wagner, whose music, as the late Mark Twain once said, is not as bad as it sounds. My learned friend Claude Erskine-Brown and the radical lawyer Miss Liz Probert were crushed up against the bust of Sir Thomas Beecham. Claude was doing his best to pour her a glass of champagne without moving his arms, and looking at her with the Erskine-Brown version of smouldering passion, and Liz was gamely twinkling back, noticing his bow tie, watch chain, and conservatively tailored gents' three-piece suiting. I do my best to reconstruct their conversation from the detailed account of Miss Probert, who, acting on the instruction of my good self, kicked off with, "Oh, that's how I like you, Claude." "Oh, you do like me a little, then, Elizabeth?" The dear old ass was suitably gratified. "When you're the old English barrister." "Did you say old?" Claude sounded miffed. I mean, I'm not old, exactly. Well, old-fashioned. That's what I mean." "Oh, I see. I like that, do you?" I should have thought you wouldn't." "Oh, yes," she assured him. "It's the old-fashioned elegance I admire, the bow tie and all that. It's rather sweet." "Actually, it's a Wickhamist bow tie," Claude said modestly. "Oh, is it really?" Liz was less than impressed. I wouldn't wear it in the daytime, but it goes rather well with a great evening out like this." "Oh, you're charming when you look like good old traditional barrister," Liz told him. "You know, the sort who takes snuff." "Snuff?" Claude was doubtful. "Yes, snuff. You think I ought to take it? As a simple working-class girl, Claude, I do find that sort of thing a wild turn-on." Oh, do you really? Snuff, eh? Well, I suppose I might give it a whirl. Claude was ready for anything in the pursuit of love. Out of a little silver box, I'd find that irresistible. Oh, and stop trying to be a whiz kid, Claude, talking about slimming down and productivity targets. Sound like some naff little middle manager in a suit. Ugh, horribly unsexy. Elizabeth, is that why you went off me? The penny was dropping fast. And consumer choice. Consumer choice is absolutely yuck. You know what I've always loved about you, Claude? Loved? Poor fellow seemed to run out of breath. Oh, please, Elizabeth, tell me. You're being so square and vague and beautifully unbusinesslike and sort of dusty. Dusty? He frowned. Well, in the nicest possible way, dreamy with all sorts of ideals, and you do believe in freelance barristers, don't you, Claude? Oh, I believe in them passionately, Elizabeth. Radical ones, too, of course. Men in love will say anything. Then would you mind saying so at the next Chambers meeting? Liz got straight down to business. That is, if you're not in too much awe of Ballard. In awe of Ballard? I'll show you if I'm in awe of Ballard. Elizabeth, he tried to hold her hand. Do you think we'll ever sing the love duet together? Not now, Claude. She released her hand. When? Perhaps after the next Chambers meeting. And then the bells rang, and Wagner called them both to another sterner duty. Whilst these historic events were taking place, I slept the peaceful sleep of the just, and went off to the Bailey with a light step, ready to fire off my considerable ammunition at Mr. Jerry Jebb, who was to be recalled as the last prosecution witness. But when a somewhat shaken Guthrie resumed his seat on the bench, he was faced with nothing but a flustered and apologetic soapy Sam Ballard.
My lord,
the discomfited prosecutor started.
I gave the court an undertaking that the witness Gerald Jebb would return today. He was warned that he must be available, but I regret to inform the court that Jebb has vanished.
Not unexpectedly, I whispered for all the world to hear. Vanished, Mr. Ballard? The judge clearly didn't believe in miracles.
The inspector thinks he has probably left the country.
Try Marbella, I suggested.
My lord, the flight of this witness, for it must be described as a flight, must cast considerable doubt on his evidence,
Ballard admitted, and then threw in,
if it can be described as evidence. Our inquiries have also disclosed that the defendant was, in fact, laying bricks in his garden, which would account for the brick dust on his clothing.
And Ballard concluded,
I therefore feel that it would not be right for the prosecution to persist with these charges.
Mr. Rumpole? His lordship asked my view of the matter, so I rose politely. I'm sure we're all grateful to my learned friend, I said. It's a wise decision, and I have no doubt your lordship has other matters to attend to. Oh, yes, indeed. I have an important meeting. And Guthrie added with some apprehension, with the Lord Chancellor. So Basher Baker was set at liberty and walked out after a gruff thanks, Brother Rumpole, to the world of pay claims and union meetings, and Mr. Justice Featherstone prepared to face a higher tribunal. Henry Fairmile had been a rather dusty, tall scarecrow of a QC and MP, with a voice like dead twigs snapping in the wind. He had been an ultra-loyal member of his party, and had been promoted by way of such dull jobs as Solicitor General and Attorney General to the woolsack and the splendour of the Lord Chancellor's office. Now in command of the judiciary, Lord Fairmile developed a quirky and ironic sense of humour, and he enjoyed teasing the judges who had not taken much notice of him at the bar. He also enjoyed discovering character weaknesses: drink, women, or holidays in the Greek islands with young men in advertising, which would debar ambitious advocates from the bench. He constantly lectured his colleagues on judgeitis, which he defined as pomposity and self-regard, while congratulating himself on his peculiar modesty for one who has in his keeping the Great Seal of the realm. When the government he served decided to reform the bar in the interests of consumer choice and the free market economy, he welcomed such plans as giving him ample scope to irritate the other judges. When the papers came out with news of Guthrie's industrial action, the Lord Chancellor sent for his striking lordship, who naturally turned up in the office in the House of Lords in fear and trembling, fully expecting to be asked to hand in his resignation as an alternative to being dismissed by a special Act of Parliament. It was not, after all, the first time that Featherstone J had been hauled up before the Chancellor. When he arrived in the big room and saw the lanky old man sitting in the white bands and tailed coat, his gold-encrusted robe and purse, and the long, full-bottomed wig on stands ready for his appearance at the Woolsack, he was surprised by the warmth of the Chancellor's welcome.
"Ah, come along in, my dear old fellow. Drink, beer and sandwiches?"
The long-abandoned symbols of conciliation stood on a side table. That's very kind, but not at the moment. Look, Lord Chancellor," Guthrie embarked on his long-prepared explanation. All that business about striking,
That's why I wanted to see you, Guthrie."
Lord Fairmile abandoned his usual pastime of fitting a large number of paper clips into a sort of daisy chain and stood up, whether Featherstone wanted it or not, to open a bottle of beer.
"I mean, we just fined the drain-clearing operatives $250,000 for not taking a ballot. Do you have that sort of money in your trousers? Do change your mind and take a small light ale."
The Chancellor smiled, and his ready hospitality gave Guthrie courage. "Well," he said, and took the proffered glass, "I think the judges pretty well agreed, Lord Chancellor, that if it came to a ballot, they might well take action."
"Oh, dear. Oh, my ears and whiskers. I don't think the Cabinet's going to like that. The idea of all those judges on a picket line with the local elections coming up, I don't think the Cabinet's going to be attracted by that. Got a cloth cap, have you?"
Lord Fairmile gave himself a light ale.
"Oh, well, Lord Chancellor, as a matter of fact, I have," Guthrie admitted. "A little something to eat."
"Oh, beer and sandwiches. The way they settle disputes in the Labour government." Guthrie smiled as he took a sandwich, which he found to be filled with Civil Service Class C hospitality fish paste.
"Sometimes the old-fashioned ways are the best,"
the Lord Chancellor admitted.
"Look here. I have no wish to quarrel with you fellows, and I don't really know why these solicitor chaps want to be judges anyway."
"Oh, quite agree." Guthrie was further encouraged. They can make much more money sitting in their offices selling houses."
"Or whatever it is they do."
The Lord Chancellor's voice was slightly muffled by a sandwich. Exactly.
"In fact, I don't know why anyone wants to be a judge, unless their practice is a bit rocky. That your trouble, was it?"
"Oh, certainly not." Guthrie was hurt. I felt a call for public duty."
"Yes, well, I suppose your wife likes it, but no more talk about going on strike, eh? What do you say we leave the whole question of solicitors joining the judges as one for the judges to decide?
Oh, absolutely super." Mr. Justice Featherstone's reaction was enthusiastic.
"I'm thinking along those lines.
the head of the judiciary told him. "Good to talk to you, Guthrie." "Oh, thank you, Lord Chancellor. It's been a most successful negotiation. May I tell my committee, I mean my brother judges?" "Oh, of course. We'll probably put something rather vague through Parliament, or to keep everybody quiet. Now then, why don't you try the cheese and tomato?" It's all ended happily. Guthrie was smiling with joy as he took the penultimate sandwich. "I can't wait to tell Marigold." Not long afterwards, we legal hacks in Equity Court met again around Ballard's boardroom table. Erskine Brown, who was toying with a small silver snuff-box, which he tapped occasionally, interrupted Ballard's tedious speech about streamlining our chambers business-wise to increase productivity and market share with the following unexpected contribution. "With all due respect to you, Ballard," he said, "aren't we in danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? We mustn't lose our freedom, our eccentricity." He looked at Liz. "That's what makes us barristers," he smiled modestly, "so attractive. Ever since the Middle Ages we've been the great freelancers, the independent radicals, the champions of freedom and against tyranny and oppression wheresoever it might be. We must preserve at all costs the great old British tradition." "Erskine Brown." Soapy Sam looked as though he'd just sat down on a favourite armchair which had gone missing.
"Am I to understand I can no longer count on your support in getting chambers efficient business-wise?"
"No, Ballard," Claude told him frankly. "I'm afraid you no longer have my support on this one."
"Does that mean we're not getting a new coffee machine?" Uncle Tom asked hopefully.
"Yes, Uncle Tom, I rather think it does," I told him.
"Ah, good."
"Let's stop trying to be a lot of whiz-kids," Claude addressed the meeting. "Talking about slimming down and productivity targets makes us sound like awful little middle managers in suits. Yuck!" And at this point he took a large pinch of snuff and broke down in hopeless, helpless sneezing, waving a large silk handkerchief.
"I say, you got the most terrible cold."
Uncle Tom seemed deeply concerned. I was looking at Liz, who was holding hands with Dave Inchcape under the table, something poor old Claude couldn't see. Not for the first time I felt a distinct pang of sympathy for the chap. That night I went home with a plastic bag on which was written "Theodore Karis, take away kebabs," which contained what I feared was going to be my dinner. But in the hallway I stopped dead. A magic perfume hung in the air, a distinct whiff of roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. When I pushed open the kitchen door, there was Hilda preparing these delicacies together with cabbage, baked potatoes, and apple tart with cream. The whole was to be washed down, I was delighted to see, with a bottle of Pomeroy's extraordinary Troisième Cru. "Has peace," I asked, broken out? "Well, poor Marigold Featherstone, she was so upset when Guthrie went on strike. Do you know what she bought him? A cloth cap. Rather funny, really. But there are certain people at the top who just shouldn't strike in the public interest. Judges and generals and, well, and, decision-makers of all kinds." I looked respectfully at Hilda. "Well, I felt that going on strike was really not on." "Ah, distinctly off." "It's just not a thing that people like me and Guthrie should do. So I thought to myself, it's a long time since you had Yorkshire pudding." "Thank you, Hilda. I was truly grateful. Thank you so much." "Well, you don't want it to get cold, do you? After I've been to all this trouble. Sit down, Rumpole. Have your dinner." What more could I do but obey?